Je tiens à assurer les membres du...
I would like to reassure the members of the committee that sound tests have been conducted. We have with us today witnesses who were with us last week, and we're going to complete last week's session. I will ask for the 4 witnesses to provide a brief summary, a 2-minute summary of their opening statements from last week so that we can put ourselves back into the context. So I would ask, and afterwards, we'll go to rounds of questions. I'd ask Mr. Stegeman to begin with to refresh our memory with regards to last week, 2 minutes maximum, to put us back into the context.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As a reminder, I had 5 specific recommendations I humbly suggested this committee make in its final report. First, that the Government of Canada meaningfully advance its commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples by developing pathways and providing resources for the co-governance of shared waters with Indigenous nations, including recognizing and upholding inherent Indigenous water rights and authority, and fulfilling the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Second, that the Government of Canada play a key role in creating and mobilizing the knowledge and tools, both Western and Indigenous, needed to understand, predict, and respond to water challenges and opportunities, particularly against the backdrop of climate change. This includes enhanced funding to amplify existing data collection and dedicated support for community-based water monitoring. Third, that the Government of Canada takes steps to strengthen cooperation across this federation around shared water decision-making and management amongst all the different levels of government. This includes, importantly, respecting the jurisdiction of Indigenous nations and peoples, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments, and focusing on that high-level capacity support while providing leadership and guidance on water management best practices. 4, that the Government of Canada leads through an approach that emphasizes the importance of watershed boundaries in all of our water decision-making. This watershed approach should consider interconnected ecological, social, economic, cultural values that must be balanced to ensure the well-being of communities and ecosystems across what are interconnected watersheds. This includes supporting watershed-based collaboration across the country, working to ensure adequate environmental flows to provide enough water to make certain that life can thrive. And finally, that the Government of Canada prioritize renewing outdated federal water laws and policies with an immediate focus on renewing the over 50-year-old Canada Water Act in collaboration with provincial, territorial, and Indigenous governments, and to ensure that the renewed Canada Water Act is consent-based and rooted in nation-to-nation relationships. That act should be co-drafted with Indigenous nations. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. On passe.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connor.
Mr. O'Connor.
Encore une fois.
Mr. O'Connor, once again, 2 minutes. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, we're here today to talk about fresh water, and I implore you to provide the protection of fresh water the attention it deserves. We're responsible for 20% of global fresh water. We have millions of lakes and rivers that could die, hundreds of native species that could disappear. For example, invasive mussels are now 90% of total biomass in Lake Huron. Like many Canadians, I have a favorite lake, and I'm sure that several of you have one as well. If we don't act, invasive species will come to your lake. They've already arrived in mine. The federal government is essential in the fight against aquatic invasive species, and we must do better. We need a national law against moving a boat with the drain plug in place and fines proportional to the value of the boat. Transport Canada must apply its existing laws and require water filtration and sterilization systems in all boats with ballasts. We need to classify boats according to their potential to spread invasive species and have license fees that are proportional to this potential. And most importantly, we need to support the fight against these invasive species. As members of Parliament and representatives of Canadians, whether you want it or not, you are involved in this fight. Before your questions, I have one for you. Are you strong enough for this fight? If you're going to show your weakness by hiding behind distractions like the carbon tax or other subjects unrelated to our water, I implore you, please give your place to someone who is strong enough and will defend our water. Water is life.
Could you give us a little roundup of about 2 minutes to refresh our memory on what you said, your opening statements, your opening statement last week?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for inviting me to speak again today. You'll recall I'm a farmer and rancher. I'm in Norfolk County, Ontario. I am also the CEO of the only farmer-led, community-based charitable organization in Canada delivering nature-based solutions on farmland. Our organization is called ALICE, and ALICE has been implementing one of the most effective and scalable solutions to water quality protection for nearly 2 decades now. We build and restore natural infrastructure on marginal or economic farmlands. We know that the solution can exist at the grassroots because we have supported over 1,600 Canadian farm families and ranchers in building nature-based solutions that enhance natural infrastructure on their lands to protect water quantity and quality, including restoring and or creating tens of thousands of acres of wetland habitat. Our network is now delivered through 14 community partners that provides our grassroots backbone, knowledge, and support. Alice has demonstrated how the agriculture community can deliver effective solutions to freshwater quality concerns across the country. We recommend the committee recognize the opportunity for the Government of Canada to invest in our network of farmers and ranchers who stand ready to scale its efforts and deliver measurable water quality outcomes through nature-based solutions for the benefit of Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Gilvesi. And finally, last but not least, Ms. Curran.
Good afternoon to the committee. In this era of collaborative governance with Indigenous communities and where climate change is having a significant impact on the way in which our communities are able to interact with water as a fundamental piece of our economic and ecological infrastructure, the federal government, it will now be required to take a larger role in both flow or issues around flow and also water pollution. So in our constitutional makeup in Canada so far, we've assumed that water is the responsibility of the provincial governments largely. It's now quite clear that with interprovincial impacts, with impacts on federal lands, with impacts with Indigenous communities and collaborative governance, that the federal government has a much larger role to play. And with renewal of the Canada Water Act, it's a perfect opportunity to figure out what that is. A couple of long-standing water quality issues that the federal government will need to address very quickly is to apply a strict non-degradation standard to the release of tailings ponds effluent from the tar sands upstream of Wood Buffalo National Park, to examine the responsibility of the federal government in the failure to control coal mine pollution emanating from the Elk Valley, and to refer the international cross-border pollution from coal mining in the Kootenay River watershed to the International Joint Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be able to get 2 rounds in. So, Mr. Deltel, for 6 minutes.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to come back on the testimony of Mr. Brian Gilvesi.
Is that okay for you, Mr. Gilvesi?
Yes.
Okay. C'est bien, merci.
Okay. Mr. Gilvesi, you mentioned in your testimony that, if I can summarize in my own words, that land manages itself if you take the right decisions. Agriculture can regenerate itself and protect itself with good agricultural practices. Could you provide some examples, things that you've experienced in your community? You talked about thousands of farms that have benefited from this pragmatic approach, this efficient approach where you listen to nature and you adapt to nature. Could you give me a specific example that you've experienced in your region and that could inspire all those who want to reduce emissions and to have a low carbon footprint, that the environment be more healthy for everyone with the approaches that you've used?
I will. I'll go directly to my own farm because I became involved in this world as third participant farmer in the Alice program back in 2006. Some over 1,600 farm families has followed our lead, but one really simple example is through our work, through our restoration work on native grasslands that Alice has helped me achieve on my lands. The organic matter on those lands has doubled in 11 years. That means that the land has the ability to hold from every single rainfall event approximately 25,000 gallons more of water. That means there's 25,000 gallons more from every water event that is allowed to seep and stay in the soil rather than run off directly into the water courses. This is a really simple example, but just about every one of our project sites across the country increases soil organic matter, increases biodiversity, but all this has the effect of slowing water, asks it to seep more slowly through the soil, recharge and replenish our water table, while slowing the outflow of water into our lakes and rivers where the damage can be done. It's complicated, but not complicated at all.
Puis-je continuer sur cette
I'm going to continue on this. The fact that farms are larger and larger, does this create a different challenge? I understand it is a different challenge, but is it easier for you to adopt and to implement measures for smaller farms? But are you able to take these measures and scale them up for larger farms? Or is it really a case-by-case basis to find the best solutions for the environment in the agricultural sector?
The answer is both. Small farmers, of course, are a little bit more closely connected to their soil. They can identify, because they put their hands in the dirt a little bit, and they can identify where maybe a wetland or a buffer strip would be most efficacious. Large farmers, on the other hand, have some tools that the small farmers don't. Modern day farming tools allow them to identify pieces of farmland that are marginal or maybe uneconomic to farm because of the scale and size of farming. And you can think about the lands along a gully in southern Ontario, for instance, that the big equipment can't get into the corners and the nooks and crannies, but that's where erosion can occur. So that provides a technical tool for those farmers, those large farmers, to identify where the opportunity lies, engage with our program, and naturalize those sites and reap large benefits. So I think that we have an opportunity to reach all sizes of farmers, and we have experienced that. The tools, the way that which they identify lands to enter into this program are just a little different.
Parlant justement des outils.
Speaking of the tools and the machinery that you have, we know that you're working on a farm. There are large distances and powerful machines are required, and most of your machines are powered either with gas or diesel. Do you see in your field a new approach that would allow the electrification or at least a reduction of the use of oil or diesel, gas in your daily lives?
My experience is limited on that front. I know that I have been engaged personally with one tractor manufacturer that wanted to test electrification farm equipment, but my experience is limited to that. I would say that by and large, we farm with fossil fuels, and that increasingly the way that we can reduce our use of fossil fuels would involve more no-till agriculture, for instance, less passes across the field, that sort of thing.
Merci. Châtel.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So my questions will be for Mr. Gilvesi. Alice has a huge impact in my riding of Pontiac. A lot of progress has been made. It's in the Outaouais region, and there's someone very active in my riding who participates in ALUS. So congratulations for this wonderful initiative, and I'm very pleased that in the Partnership for Agriculture, we have funded programs such as ALUS. This being said, I was reading through your recommendations, and this has an important impact on my riding. Your recommendation, made jointly with other organizations such as the SINAP, you talk about the importance of harmonizing measures taken by all levels of government with targets and objectives for the strategy, the national strategy for the protection of biodiversity. This is your recommendation 1.2 in your report. I do have a question. The coordination between different levels of government for projects of ALUS with farmers in order to protect biodiversity, well, this requires a lot of time for the implementation. So could you speak to this recommendation? I think it's a really important one.
I think sometimes we, and thank you for hosting Alice in your community. We're very proud of what's been achieved there. We do hope to duplicate or repeat that success in Outaouais again and again across the country with proper financial support. What's interesting to recognize is sometimes how our work can fall through the cracks, because clearly, if we're doing something using natural systems on farmland to do something that benefits biodiversity, there's also a clear water benefit to that, and a clear climate benefit, and a very clear resilience benefit to our rural communities across Canada. Sometimes we get caught out on governments delivering on one of those four priorities without recognizing the opportunity to tackle all four of the problems at the same time by using nature to help us solve the biodiversity, the climate, and the water crisis that we face in Canada. So it's funny how we have siloed things, but at the same time, the opportunity exists to see other actors that can benefit from our work. And I point most directly to our community partners in Alberta that come to us as a municipality because they value the natural infrastructure that our project sites can provide to them on top of the climate, water, and resilience benefits. So just harmonizing on this point of leverage, that many things can occur when we work with nature and find opportunity on our rural countryside in Canada.
Merci, c'est très éclairant.
Thank you. You said this with regards to biodiversity and water protection. A lot of people are working in silos, and if we have leadership on behalf of the federal government, it's important to break down these silos. Now, my question for Mr. O'Connor. You were talking about courage and the importance to not hide behind slogans in order to reduce our climate programs, to reduce funding to programs. And so I think it's important to work so that our children will have a future. You were talking about, I'd like to hear you speak about solutions. There are invasive species throughout the mussels in the Great Lakes. Well, once this invasive species is installed, it's difficult to get rid of it. In my region, there are huge efforts being made, and they're trying to act on invasive mussel species. But with regards to the Great Lakes, it seems to be a lost cause. Right now, is to try to reduce the introduction of invasive species, to constrain it so that it stays where they are found right now and that there's no propagation. Each mussel can have over 1 million eggs a year. So we're talking about huge, huge quantities. It's prevention. Prevention has to be the first step, and this is the most efficient way of reducing the risk and stopping these types of invasive mussel issues. Once you're trying to control, then the costs become exponentially higher. For the Great Lakes, as an example, there's a city that takes its water from Lake Ontario, and to not have mussels, it takes over $50,000 a year for the municipality for the water intake. And we've seen mussels arrive in the treatment plant. They're going to have to replace 12 filters every year, and every filter costs $20,000. And this is a municipality with 2,500 inhabitants. So the most important thing is to prevent the issue, to stop the arrival of these invasive species, and that is why you have to do something with regards to the plugs. This is one of the things. It's the easiest way for boats with ballasts, and that way you have less contaminated water. We're going to stop there. Now, Mrs. Posey. Okay, so thank you to all our witnesses for being here. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for having come twice in less than a month. There are 5 regional councils in Quebec. There's yours, Estrie, 128 municipalities, 9 MRCs, 3,000 lakes. And when we met earlier this fall, I learned a lot on invasive species. My question, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then it will avoid interruption, and I'll let you speak. Within the framework of this current study, questions were sent out to all departments, and Transport Canada did respond, does not apply, does not apply, does not apply. It was amazing, really. And so, in your opinion, what measures could Transport Canada implement? We think that they do have a role to play. So what could Transport Canada do right away to protect our lakes? Not in 10 years, now. And my second question has to do with the Western AIS. It's a strategy that doesn't exist in Canada to control invasive species. The floor is yours. To clarify one thing, the West AIS does exist in Canada. In BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, they're part of the group. When I provided an example of some states that have this, Alberta also has. For Transport Canada, I was very surprised to find out that they were saying that there was nothing to do because they are the ones who manage the registration of boats and permits for pleasure craft. And pleasure craft need to have further regulation. Pleasure craft are the ones that are introducing these invasive species in uncontaminated lakes. So when we talk about registration fees for craft, a lot of states are using these fees that have to be renewed every year in order to assist in supporting their programs. So this is a source of funding where it's a user pay model. The users represent the highest risk, and they're responsible to support programs in order to reduce the risk and the danger. When we talk about things that we could implement as of now, Transport Canada, they talk about programs for boats with ballast, where you have to have water filtration and sterilization systems for boats with ballasts. But we should have similar systems in all boats with ballasts. For example, wake boats can have ballasts that are hundreds of liters. So all of this is forgotten, and they can have hundreds of liters of contaminated water without a filtration system. And so it's impossible to clean this water. It's impossible to empty this ballast. And so either Transport Canada has to implement inspection checkpoints, or they have to obligate or force filtration and sterilization systems in all boats with ballasts. Do I have time left? So when we talk about the Western, I know that with New York, there are some very strict rules. But if we're facing Michigan and other states that have less stringent regulations, how can we succeed in fighting against invasive species? Well, I think that we have to look at the best examples, look at where it's working. I believe that that's why I use Western AIS as an example of something that is working. We have large regions in the West that don't have any invasive species in their water, and it's because of this system of control that they've implemented. So in Nevada, for example, they have a few contaminated lakes, and they have boats that arrive at the border. They call it mussel boats, and it's a boat that is totally covered with mussels because they spend year-round in contaminated waters. You can see a few centimeters of mussels, but they are able to decontaminate this so that it doesn't represent a danger, and this is how they stop the invasive species from entering their lake. With the remaining time, could you speak about the CN routes? This summer, we were talking about an important role that could be played in the transmission of invasive species on the CN rails. Are you talking about railways? I don't think that was with me. I was not talking about railways. I'm not really aware of CN and that issue. Sorry. One last question. Do you have any recommendations that have been written out with other regional councils in Quebec and that could be implemented by federal entities? Quickly, please. Quickly. 45 seconds. So quickly, one of the things that we hope to implement is a law on these plugs for the drain plugs. So we want municipalities to work together for the cleaning stations, and also we would like to have a training program for people who are working so that they have standardized training on how to inspect and decontaminate boats. Thank you, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, it's a real privilege to be able to be in this committee to talk about fresh water. It's very important. Even though this morning was a surprise to me, I was planning to be here next week. Hopefully I'll be back. But there's very few times, I think, in Parliament where we actually focus on real problems and real solutions, and I think this study is going to be an important part of that. So my first question to Mr. Stegeman, and you talk about the importance of reconciliation when we talk about fresh water, and your suggestion that shared governance is one of the ways to address this. Can you give us some examples of where shared governance over freshwater resources is already working? And perhaps if there aren't a lot of those, can you talk about the models that provide the most prospects for success in shared governance?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a really complicated landscape. Obviously, the waters are shared. It requires a more integrated approach, and all jurisdictions are needed: federal, provincial, regional, Indigenous nations, and people. There are a few examples of where this is taking place. At a really large level, an example that many point to is the Mackenzie River Basin Transboundary Waters Master Agreement, a very long title, where multiple governments have come together to determine what might happen in the Mackenzie River. But at different scales, governance can occur differently. And so we also see local examples in the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island, which is something I think Deborah Kern could also speak to really, really well in probably a more intimate manner than I can. But the Cowichan Valley example is one where Indigenous nations, in addition to other jurisdictions, come together to determine the governance of that water body in a manner where they are making decisions together in ongoing tables. I think that this, just to bring it back to the federal government, I think that there's an opportunity here in the federal approach to water management. As the federal government, it's the perfect jurisdiction to have a high-level overview and to bring together multiple jurisdictions as part of a federal government approach to water governance. by creating the space for and resources for governance tables that includes all jurisdictions. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the government to recommend in its report that the Government of Canada bring together governance tables like this at multiple scales. And I know that's complicated because every scale would need its own bespoke approach. But to bring together governance tables that includes First Nations governments, provincial, territorial, and regional is an opportunity that the federal government can take in supporting water health across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Stegman, and also thank you for highlighting the need for resources for governance, because that's sometimes something that I think we all forget about. And of course, you foreshadowed my questions to Ms. Kern, and essentially, Ms. Kern, I'd ask you the same question, and I know that you will talk about Cowichan.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the most interesting and perhaps innovative water governance that's going on right now is where local communities have partnered with the provincial and in some cases the federal government to do things in a very different way. And so I'll just give you three examples. So maybe I'll start with the most controversial and the hardest one to deal with is, you're all familiar with the Mikisew Cree First Nation, the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation in northern Alberta, and their longstanding relationship with the Peace Athabasca Delta and the Wood Buffalo National Park. And so they are in the place where they rely extensively on water flows for accessing their traditional territories to hunt and do other traditional activities. They're impacted by the flows coming in from British Columbia and the Peace because of the variety of dams that are there, and then also the pollution that's coming up from the tar sands in Alberta. So they have entered into various agreements with the federal government to address both flows and contamination, and primarily pushed by an international body, so UNESCO at the United Nations level. So there's been an action plan, and there's been a lot of movement in that in a way that at a very large scale hasn't been seen before. Two other examples are, as Andrew mentioned, the Coxsala in the Cowichan. So Cowichan tribes entered into an agreement with the province of BC, and the federal government has been involved integrally from a fisheries perspective, but they've entered into an agreement to do a joint water sustainability plan. So the idea is to address flow issues in a comprehensive planning way so that farmers don't get shut off every year. So that's the problem, is that in August and September, there's a pretty integral flow problem. And so in order to make sure that not all the fish die, then the farmers have to go to a watering regime that's not ideal for them, and primarily they're dairy farmers. And so they've entered into an agreement to deal with the upland aspects of flows, so the forestry and other things that are going on in the watershed. And the idea is that this is a 500-year plan. So it really gets beyond the short-term approaches to collaborative management, and is saying, look, we're in this relationship for a very long time, and we have to start to fix it properly. The final example is the Gitniau Hereditary Chiefs, who have just recently declared their water policy based on their Indigenous legal order. And so they have actually established their own flow and quality parameters for using water within their territory. So they have a longstanding relationship with the province around land use planning, and they've now just brought it over to water flows.
Thank you. We'll start our second round with Mr. Mazier for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Galvesy, in a press release on your website from last year, Alice wrote, and I quote, "Farmers are often left out of the sustainability conversation," end quote. Many farmers feel the same way. They feel that the current government neglects their concerns when it comes to environmental policy development. How do we change this?
I think through the leadership of that we've provided across our community partnerships, leadership from a group that you know well, the Keystone Agriculture Producers, for example, who originally sponsored this Alice idea in the early 2000s. The way we challenge the concept is by understanding the opportunity. There are people on the land that have knowledge, skills, energy, to help solve some of the world's biggest environmental crises if we would only turn to them and engage them in a productive way. Our program is built on a set of principles and has been led and developed by farmers to lay out not a treatise, but a set of terms that work for farmers to provide this engagement and provide massive opportunity. The scale that we can provide opportunity at is increasingly large. Already, we are a bit of a fledgling organization, but we've already changed the landscape on 200 square kilometers of lands. That's the size of a small national park. That's Elk Island National Park through what is a small not-for-profit led by farmers, delivered through community partnerships that makes you understand that the potential through engagement is enormous.
Okay, thank you. Last year, Sustainable Development Technology Canada, known as SDTC, announced a $5 million investment to support environmental work of Ellis. Much of that investment would contribute to projects relating to fresh water. Since then, Canadians have learned that SDTC has turned into a slush fund overrun with conflicts of interest. The Ethics Commissioner, the Auditor General are both investigating the slush fund. Seeing that the fund has been suspended, I'd like to know if the corruption at SDTC has impacted the $5 million investment announced for Ellis.
I will say that the SDTC process that we participated in to receive their $5 million investment was a very intensive, deep dive due diligence process that I saw no malfeasance, no corruption. That due diligence process was intense. It's supported through audits. And I believe for us, at least our experience was that there was a clean process.
You've received the funding then?
Yes, we have.
I'll pass my remaining time over to Mr. Cram.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mazier. Mr. Chair, with the time we have left, I would like to quickly move the motion
Mr.
that
Chair.
I tabled last week, and then we can return to the witnesses. So the motion reads as follows. Given that A, the Chiefs of Ontario have filed a judicial review in federal court on the Liberal government's carbon tax, B, the Chiefs of Ontario have noted that Indigenous communities would face greater challenges in switching to lower emitting technologies. C, Grand Chief Abram Benedict of the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne stated, quote, "The government has boasted that Canadians will pay a carbon tax, but through the rebates, through the subsidies, they will actually receive more than what they have paid. That doesn't ring true for First Nations communities," unquote. D, Canada's Environment Commissioner and Parliamentary Budget Officer acknowledge that the carbon tax disproportionately punishes Canadians who live in rural, remote, and northern regions. And E, and the Liberal government failed to provide a temporary carbon tax exemption on home heating for 97% of Canadians. Pursuant to Standing Order 1081A, the committee invite Grand Chief Abram Benedict and the Chiefs of Ontario to testify for no less than 2 hours by December 12, 2023, on their judicial review filing on the federal carbon tax. Mr. Chair, we've all heard from our constituents about the effects of the carbon tax on the rising cost of living. We've recently seen the federal government announce a pause on the carbon tax for home heating oil. We may be seeing an exemption from the carbon tax for certain farming activities, assuming Bill C-234 gets passed into law. And now we are looking at a judicial review from the Chiefs of Ontario. So I think it would be reasonable to invite the Chiefs to the committee and hear the details and the particulars of what exactly they are proposing in terms of a carbon tax exemption and how that could be implemented in a way that respects Indigenous rights. Mr. Chair, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Van Couverden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just note that the Conservatives are consistently wasting the witnesses' time when they raise these motions outside of committee business. We had committee business an hour 2 days ago. We could have done this then. So I move to adjourn debate on this.
We'll have a vote.
Do I want to talk for an hour for it?
Mr. Ali?
In favor.
Madame Chatel? Ajourner le débat.
Oui.
Mr. Longfield?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor-Roy?
Oui.
Mr. Vancouverton?
Oui.
Monsieur Dautel?
Non.
Mr. Cram?
No.
Mr. Leslie?
No.
Mr. Mazur?
No.
Madame Posey?
No.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay, so we'll go now to Ms. Taylor-Roy for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here and the work you're doing on this really important topic. And I'd particularly like to thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for your challenge to this committee to focus on the topic at hand, because water is life, and we know this is a very important study that we're doing that has been interrupted several times by diversions on other things that are not necessarily on our agenda right now. So I'd like to, and you also mentioned that we all have a favorite body of water or lake. Mine is Lake Simcoe. I'm the member for Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill. It's a medium-sized lake, a large watershed, and almost 500,000 people live in the watershed area. And it's been faced with many, many challenges, especially phosphorus loads, obviously climate change, a lot of invasive species, although they're different than the ones you have. And one of the things that I have found to be very disconcerting is that even though we might agree that the federal government should have jurisdiction over some of these issues, often when provinces are not in accordance with the same goals or have different goals, we cannot see progress made. And in this case, there's been extensive development, new highways, many things that are threatening, continue to threaten, and continue to increase the phosphorus load and other problems that this lake is experiencing. How do you think the provincial and federal governments should collaborate, or how can we work to help these freshwater bodies when provincial governments are not of the same mind?
Malheureusement et honnêtement, je suis pas trop.
I'm not sure how to convince our provinces to act. I know that at all levels, we have politicians that don't necessarily want to commit themselves to the protection of our waters. One of the most important things for me is that we really do have to find a way to unite people. Water doesn't care about borders. Water goes over borders, and when we talk about different watersheds, it can be huge. It can cross borders. And so it's this justification that leads me to say that we do need cooperation and coordination between both. Too often, it is the responsibility of local parties to act for their own waterways, and it's up to them to fight against the highest levels of government. I think this is one of the most important questions before us, how to protect our water. As I was saying, my favorite lake has changed in my lifetime. It's changed from when I was younger, when I visited my grandparents. It's no longer the same lake. And we need to protect this. It's not just for a 4-year mandate of government. If we're talking about periods of time, we're talking about decades. We need to act over decades. And so I know that I didn't really answer the question as to how to ensure commitment, but it's a personal message from myself to all levels of government. Government needs to commit to this. It's not a question, it's not a question for political gamesmanship. All levels of government, all parties, everyone needs to do everything possible to protect the water.
I guess in 30 seconds then, the question is because we do have the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, Rescue Lake Simcoe, a number of groups that have been working to protect it. What do you think could be the most impactful thing to do to convince people then? Because it seems like governments and development and greed seem to always trump, listening and respecting nature, as my colleague Mr. Deltel has said.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly.
Honnêtement, si on avait...
If we had unlimited resources, I think that people should be brought to the lake and to show people what they risk losing, and to show examples of cases that are now lost causes. We do have lakes like that, lakes that will never come back. When we talked about how to intervene, well, how to react when the invasive mussel species have arrived, sometimes we can't, and we just have to mourn the loss of the lake. Thank you. For people to see of their own eyes. Yes, Mrs. Posey, 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes. So my question is for Mr. Gilles Vissy. I'm not sure if Gilles Vissy. Earlier on, you spoke about natural infrastructure built by farmers and cattle farmers, and how to lessen the use of fertilizer. But your work is wonderful, but there's also a use of pesticide. This is another issue. So when you talk about infrastructure and the benefits for natural structures, is there something that can be done for the increase in pesticide use? This is quite concerning, both for the environment and for human health.
I just hope everyone bears in mind that when we're talking about restoring natural infrastructure, that we capture all manner of things from entering into the freshwater courses, be it topsoil, pesticides, perhaps fertilizers. These strips, these pieces of land, these natural spaces that we put on, provide a wonderful way to buffer our water from all the activities we as humans have on our lands. And it's just to be recognized that this isn't just about one particular thing.
Okay,
this is about all the things.
I'm sorry to cut you off. So if I'm understanding, the buffer zones that you have can be reliable as well against pesticides. So here's another question. Mr. Chair, my question is from Mr. Andrews from FLO. You spoke about prioritizing 2 weeks ago. I was surprised to learn that one of your priorities for the next 10 years, you have priorities for the next 10 years. So management of chemicals cannot wait. We can't wait 10 years. So is there something there? Could you perhaps review your priorities, especially with regards to the increase in chemical use?
I don't actually recall that recommendation, or my recommendations weren't based on 10 years either. So maybe it was a different conversation, but I will say this. I think water data is a really important consideration when thinking about anything when it comes to the health of waters. It's really important to understand only 40% of our watersheds, if you count the 167 sub-watersheds across Canada, only 40% of them, only 57 of those watersheds do we have sufficient accessible data to assess their overall health. We literally do not know the health of our waters. And I think this is a massive issue when it comes to contaminants, chemicals, and I think that my colleague Dominique Malchambre can speak especially well to the need around data management.
I'm going to have to stop you there, but I would say to the committee that we do have a module on data, and we have some really interesting witnesses lined up to address that particular issue. So thank you for that segue into that module, which will come later. We'll go now to Mr. Garrison for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to go to Mr. O'Connor and thank him for his emphasis on the prevention of the spread of invasive species. I'm not going to thank him because he's going to cause me to out myself on my favorite lake, which actually isn't in my riding, because I represent a riding that has perhaps more saltwater bays than freshwater lakes. But in my question, you'll see my favorite lake will get exposed here. My question to you is, I know it's kind of a leading question, but what we see often is that the monitoring of the spread of invasive species is left to nonprofits and volunteer organizations in this country who do this work out of great dedication but with very slender or almost no resources. And one case, the Okanagan and Similkameen Invasive Species Society, Okanagan Lake, my favorite lake, they for 3 years have been asking people who own docks to do monitoring to try and catch invasive mussels before they spread through the lake. And so I'm asking you that leading question because I know it's true. Almost everywhere it's volunteers who are doing this work to prevent the spread of invasive species. That's my question.
OK. Oui, en effet, c'est...
Yes. So the time, the volunteer time to save lakes is huge. We're talking about scientific divers that go and they pick the mussels by hand. And we're talking about hundreds of dives a year, hundreds of people. So if you go, it's 3 dives in 1 day of a 1 hour each in quite cold water sometimes. And if you had to pay for these people, we would never have a sufficient budget to do that. And for me, this is one of the things that I see what's happening with these permits that have to be renewed instead of being lifetime permits. And a part of this funding could be used for these programs to fight against invasive species. That way we could depend a little bit less on volunteers, but we could support more programs, more management programs, programs for monitoring, for example, and the federal government could play a very important role and to distribute funds to support these efforts, these local efforts.
And one of the things volunteer groups have been doing, I know in the Okanagans, is trying to convince the public that there's an economic cost as well as an environmental cost to invasive species, whether it's loss of fish habitat and recreational waters that change. And do we see that in most of the organizations that were able to convince the public it's worth spending the money on this?
Quickly, please, yeah.
Oui, c'est surtout...
Yes. There's a huge economic cost when we talk about recreational and tourism aspects. If we think of a beautiful beach, well, if it's covered with mussel shells, if it's cutting into people's feet, and then in the water, there's Eurasian milfoil that is so dense that you can almost walk on this and you can't even swim through it. Well, who wants to spend time there? Right, who wants to visit anything of this sort?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to Mr. O'Connor for coming back to our committee. Your passion for the issue of invasive species is very evident and very much appreciated. In your opening statement, you talked about the role that Transport Canada can play in this issue, and I wonder if you could provide for us any examples of current laws that are on the books but are not currently being enforced, and if it is more of a matter of enforcement, so more so than changing the laws that exist. If there are any examples, I would find that very helpful.
I'm not really aware of all the laws that exist. What I mentioned is especially a law with regards to ballast. On the website of Transport Canada, when they talk about ballast, it's especially for large commercial ships that are crossing oceans, but they don't take into account that there are ballasts and other in almost every boat, and these spaces create a huge issue for the introduction of invasive species in a new region. And so if you take this act as it exists, saying that you need a filtration and sterilization system for ballast water, well, this act should be applied to all boats that are sold in Canada, but they don't all have this system. So here we're talking about an existing act, and according to what's found in the act, it should apply to other boats or watercraft, but it's not applied.
And when you're talking about all boats, how big or small are we talking? Like you mentioned, ocean-going freighters, but are we talking as small as boats that could be towed by an SUV or pickup truck?
Oui.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. There are some wake boats that are about 16 feet long, and they have ballast 200 or 300 liters. You can go to a store and buy a huge bag of ballast, and you can put that in the 12-foot boat that you got from your grandfather. So even that technically could be a boat with a ballast.
And when it comes to protecting our lakes from invasive species, would there be the most benefit to having this monitoring and this enforcement in place at the Canada-U.S. border, or are we talking interprovincial borders where it might be more beneficial? If you could speak to that, that would be very helpful.
C'est pas juste la frontière nationale.
It's not just the international border or the provincial border. It's anywhere between two waterways that can create an issue. One of the problems is that our current approach in my region, this could force all the lakes to have a washing and decontamination station. And when we talk about S3, 3,000 lakes, $50,000 at a washing station, we're talking about $135 million for a region that has less than 1 million citizens. So if we talk about increasing the cost of living, well, what kind of tax would you put into fund that? So what we need to target isn't necessarily a question linked to borders, but rather places where there are a lot of watercraft that are moving around, and especially around contaminated sites. So it's not really an issue of borders per se, but it's an issue of being efficient and intelligent in how resources are used.
Mr. Chair, how are we doing for time? A minute, okay. So can you give us an idea of how much these regulations would cost? Like if we were to implement these new regulations or these new laws, how much effect would that have on a boat-by-boat basis? How much would it cost?
Ça dépend de l'embarcation, puis ça dépend du risque que ça...
It depends on the watercraft and the risk that it represents. When I said earlier on, fine and the drain plug, and that it be proportional to the value of the boat, well, if we take the example of Alberta, $180. If you go around with the drain plug in place, for someone who has inherited a boat from their grandfather and they're working a minimum wage, that's a lot of money. But the boat isn't really a risk. It's less risky than the large wick boat that costs $250,000. It costs over $400 to fill the tank. So for them, someone who can pay for that, it's not a problem. The $180 isn't a problem for them. It's less than filling the tank. So this is where, if we put 5% value as a fine, well, then it becomes problematic for the person that has a huge boat, but they can pay if they're able to pay for the boat at $250,000.
Last but not least, Mr. Vancouver, then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Mr. Stegeman, and I'm going to try to ask 3 questions, so I just ask that the answers be kind of brief. Mr. Stegeman, I was fortunate enough to work on the Indigenous Northern Affairs Committee during the UNDRIP legislation. We passed that despite protestations and voting against by the Conservatives, but I'm really glad that we got UNDRIP legislation through. What aspects of it do you think are most sort of the low-hanging fruit on water rights for Indigenous peoples? What should we do next as a government to ensure that water protection is a priority for Indigenous communities through the lens of UNDRIP?
I think the most important thing in front of the committee when it comes to recommendations for that is the renewal of the Canada Water Act. I think that the Canada Water Act is 50 years old, and I think that it's really important that that act is aligned with, respects, and upholds UNDRIP. With respect to water, that is the opportunity, and that's why the Canadian Coalition for Healthy Waters is advocating for that act to be co-drafted with Indigenous nations. And I know that's not easy, but I think that a real effort to be transparent, to bring Indigenous nations in right now, pre-engagement with the act, and to renew that act in a way that it is co-drafted is the best opportunity to uphold UNDRIP right now with respect to water. When I speak with Indigenous nations, the comment I always hear is water is not a resource. Water is an element that is essential for life. And to Indigenous peoples, it is sacred. And so I think that is the most important thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sigmund. I appreciate that. My second question is for Mr. Gilvesi. Thank you for coming back to the committee. Our government's really proud of the millions and millions of dollars we spent in nature-based solutions for agriculture. I was fortunate enough to visit some recently on a farm in the Rouge Urban National Park. Could you give us a couple of examples, maybe just one example very briefly with respect to some of the solutions we might see in Norfolk County? I was fortunate enough to visit your region recently too, and just along the shores of Lake Erie, and it's really beautiful, and I thought some clear examples might be helpful.
So we operate in 40 different communities across Canada, but what's unique about our program is it's delivered locally. So the local committee led by farmers makes the decisions on what occurs on the Norfolk Sandplain, for instance, and they do locally appropriate things. One of the things that's very popular here is the restoration of tallgrass prairie onto our lands. A lot of people don't or forget that tallgrass prairie was native to this landscape. And by returning it to the sand plain, we get great efficacy by putting this extremely deep-rooted and drought-tolerant plant back on our landscape for biodiversity and for building soil health and water quality is a really great example. We also work a tremendous amount on erosion control. So creating the structures that stop in our highly erodible sand plain and easily erodible, creating the structures that our gullies and fields don't wash into the cold water streams and into the water courses. So thereby we get good protection for the cold water streams and the trout habitat there, and of course downstream for the algae blooms in the Great Lakes. Those are two of the things that are unique to what happens in Norfolk because of the sand plain that we operate on.
Thank you very much.
Across Canada. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Gilvesi. I just want to acknowledge how critical working with farmers and agriculture workers is in fighting climate change, and I want to thank you for your work. My third and final question is for Mr. David O'Connor. Merci d'être ici encore pour notre fois. Je suis
Thank you once again. I went to your region twice for the national championship for kayaks. And are there any concerns for canoes or kayaks in the job that you do? There are concerns for all craft, all watercraft. It's a question of degree of risk. As I was mentioning, when we talk about, for example, a canoe or a kayak, it's easy to dry. It's not necessarily a closed space. You can empty it quite easily. There's less risk. When you're talking about risks, of course, it's a question of reducing the risk. That's why when I talk about a high-risk watercraft, fishing vessels with closed spaces,
consumption tax on very large boats for recreational purposes, and we've also been investing a lot into habitat renewal and with a huge investment into the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission for invasive species, and I hope that's a flow through that you acknowledge as an effective way to get the job done on both sides of the ledger. Thank you for your time.
Super. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you to the witnesses and to the members of the committee for really enlightening testimony and answers. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for having come back to Ottawa. So we're going to stop here and pursue next Tuesday. So we wish you a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. Mr. Chair, is it correct that, could we have 2 or 3 minutes?
30.
Yes, I guess, yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, if we're done with our witnesses,
Yeah.
I have a motion that I'd like to
Go ahead, yeah.
to the table. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here and for coming back. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. Mr. Chair, today, despite opposition from some politicians who seek to obstruct actions that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, our government has made history. Our government earlier today made news to cap emissions from the oil and gas sector without impacting production, and this builds on a motion in the House of Commons that was first passed on June 17, 2019, before my time as a member, when we declared a national climate emergency. And earlier today in the meeting, Mr. Chair, I was proud to distribute a hard copy of the 2023 progress report on the 2030 emissions reductions plan. That motion back in 2019 came about as a result of the government's recognition that Canada needed to do our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly and rapidly. It was followed on March 25, 2021 by a decision from the Supreme Court of Canada which found that carbon pollution knows no boundaries and that our Parliament has the authority to address it and therefore a moral imperative to do so. After that, we increased our commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030, which is in line with limiting global warming to less than 2 degrees, and our emissions reduction plan progress report, which I brought here today. It also shows that we are well on our way to meeting both that target and our interim objective of 20% below 2005 levels by 2026. It's also worth noting, Mr. Speaker, that Conservatives consistently suggest that this government has missed opportunities or we haven't achieved our goals. That's not only not true today, Mr. Speaker, it's not true of any of our objectives. And when we realize that we will exceed a certain objective, we increase our ambitions as we have on this one. Increasingly, there is widespread recognition that...
Sorry, yes, Mr. Mazur.
This isn't related to the testimony
I think
today.
Mr. Vancouverton is giving notice. Is
Yes.
that, yeah, you're giving notice. You're not moving this. You can't move it because it requires...
Is it related to today?
No, but he's giving notice. He's got the floor. He's giving notice. Do you have much more to say in terms of...
One paragraph and then the motion.
Est-ce qu'on l'a, la motion?
Do we have this motion? No. He's giving notice. We're not going to discuss the motion today.
Assez rapidement.
If you could end, Mr. McGordon.
Shane,
Thank you. I do have a copy for those who want it.
Increasingly, there's widespread recognition that Canada cannot reach our 2030 and 2050 emissions reductions targets without significant contributions from the oil and gas sector. Because while most sectors of our economy are reducing their emissions, much of that progress is being negated by emissions from the oil and gas sector, which continue to grow. But there are signs of hope. Even the Pathways Alliance, a group of the largest oil and gas companies in Canada, have committed to reducing their emissions to net zero by 2050, and our government is stepping up to help the entire sector to ensure that it can continue to play the critical role that it plays in our economy while also holding it accountable to its commitments. Given all of that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to give formal notice of the motion that, given that, the federal government is making monumental investments in technologies that will reduce emissions in the oil and gas sector. 2, Canadians deserve to have certainty that these investments will result in significant emissions reductions. 3, capping and reducing emissions from the oil and gas sector is necessary to meet our 2030 emissions reductions goals and avert the worst impacts of climate change. And 4, reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector has the potential to create high-quality, sustainable jobs. The committee expressed its collective support for the government's proposal to amend the federal methane regulations for the oil and gas sector to require a reduction of methane emissions in the upstream oil and gas sector by at least 75% below 2012 levels by 2030, and B, introduce a regulatory framework document on the proposed approach and stringency of a cap on greenhouse gas pollution from the oil and gas sector. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, okay, so notice has been given, and I think we'll adjourn. Yeah.